Today we're going to sculpt Irelia from the video game League of Legends. After checking out all the new skins that got released for the new Lunar Revel event, her design really caught my attention, so I wanted to create my own version of her. As always, I'm starting with a sphere. The first goal is to create a face that is unique and fitting for her. My favorite part to start with are the eyes, or at least the eye holes, because I can use those as an anchor point to replace all the other facial features. A bump for the nose and a bump for the lips, and the most important parts are already in place. To finish the basic face, I fill the eye holes, first with the eyeballs and then the rest with the fat surrounding them. 2 brush strokes later, she can finally open her eyes and I can create a unique look for her. The main reference for Irelia's face is one of the game's cinematics, which shows her in a more realistic style, and her face in that is actually based on a real person. So my goal was to capture her likeness as good as possible. I'm pretty bad at likeness sculpting, so I never work on it for too long, but I at least wanted to capture what makes her face unique. The next goal is to give her a body. Like the face, I like to start with the basic shapes first, meaning subdivided cubes that allow me to block out all necessary body parts and get the proportions right before I go into more detail. Just like my previous character Starfire, I like to use just a few objects and manipulate them more instead of using an object for each major bone, because this way I can focus more on the overall shape and don't have to do as much refining afterwards. First I wanted to make her a bit shorter, but that looked weird to me, so to avoid having to do a lot of adjustments later, I went back to my usual 7.5 heads. The project, is already long enough. To refine her body, I can join all these shapes together and get back into my warm and cozy comfort zone, aka sculpt mode. With the crease, smooth, grab and clay strips brush, I can now turn these big shapes into the individual muscles of her body, getting rid of volume or adding more where it's necessary. I'm pretty comfortable with the general anatomy of the body, so I first make sure that all the muscles and bones are in the right place before I once again give her that unique touch. To make her unique, I like to choose how I want to set her apart from the basic female body. More defined muscles, a bigger butt, or smaller boobs are some of the more obvious examples. And of course, I cannot escape the biggest fear of mine, which is sculpting hands. They have a tight grip on my confidence, but especially with the last 2 characters, I feel more and more comfortable sculpting them. Slowly but surely, these bony sausages take shape and I can move on to retopology. She has way too much geometry right now, but that's pretty easy to fix. I just grabbed 2 of my base meshes and sew them together Frankenstein style. And now with my favorite add-on soft wrap, I can wrap this new model around my sculpt and, oh wait, hold on. I forgot to create the eye hold for the actual eye models. Now I can wrap my new model around the sculpt and get the same model but with better geometry. The next goal is to give her a cool pose. Rigging, aka adding bones to her body, is just like retopology, as in I don't like doing it, so I asked my second best friend Miximo if they can rig her for me. The automatic rigging process worked pretty well, except for the hands, which I had to fix manually, because I wanted to create a more complicated pose. League of Legends creates really cool and dynamic splash art for their characters, and I really wanted to emulate that style for her as well. A very easy way to make your shots more dynamic is to tilt the camera. Also, putting the camera above or below the character can give them a whole different appearance and can bring out the character of the character a lot more. But the first 2 poses weren't dynamic enough, so I went even further for the third and final one, lowering the focal length of the camera to create some extreme foreshortening and creating a shot just like League of Legends splash arts. And of course, because I hate having time to do anything else, I also wanted to add her blades in a small environment. After blocking those out and creating the rough layout in the final shot, everything was looking pretty good. I wasn't 100% sure whether her face will look good in the end, so I wanted to check that next. I gave her an actual facial expression in sculpt mode and then went on to the peripherals. Her mouth is open, so she needs teeth and a tongue, and next up her face looks weird without any hair, so I grabbed my eyebrow and eyelash models from an old project and fit them onto her. Now before I can really judge her face, I need to add my face scan texture and set up the basic shader for her skin. And with all these things in place, I think her face looks acceptable. And she hasn't even put on her makeup yet. You know what else she hasn't put on yet? Some clothes. So why don't we do that now? This is the part where my fun meter goes down significantly. Modeling clothes in Blender is very similar to retopology, which means that I have to model every piece manually. And with all these small itty bitty bits and pieces that her outfit consists of, this took a very long time. Luckily, with the power of editing, you don't have to go through the same ordeal. To sum it up, I start with the biggest pieces, which in this case are her top corset, sleeve, stockings, and boots. Once those are in place, I can add details like folds with the multi-res modifier, and now I can reuse or add neo geometry for the smaller elements of the outfit, like the outer edge of the corset or the ornamental pieces on her hip and shoulder. These pieces are what makes the outfit look great, but they also take a long time to model. So it's a fine line between having not enough details and losing yourself in the endless pit of possible details you can add to make your model just a smidge better. What helps me to not get lost is to set a deadline, and that one is quickly approaching. For blades, I've used a technique that I've never really used before. I found a really great reference for them online. Using that as a guide, I can trace these shapes with individual vertices and then add thickness to them by moving some parts up or down. This results in this framework of lines that already resembles the final look. Now I just have to connect all the individual vertices, maybe add a few more to fill the gaps, and I transfer the 2D concept into 3D space. It may not be perfect, but it's good enough for this project. And of course, to create the gold cover, I can just separate that part of the geometry, fill the holes, and because of the bevel modifier, there's a nice seam line between the two parts. There are 6 unique blades, but I decided to only create 3 because, 4 of them look very similar. So I can just use one of the 3 for the remaining ones and have some variation in the way they're aligned with the camera. The last part that is still very rough is her hair. For the more elaborate project, I like to sculpt the basic shape of the hair first before I replace it with the final real hair. Starting from the bottom of the scalp, I add these big strands. These will fill the volume and also define the general shape of the final hairstyle. With just these, the hairstyle doesn't look that great, but I can see if it's going in the right direction or if there's something I want to change. To have enough detail around the top and the front of the head, I add shorter strands. These can fill out the hairline and create a nice structure where it matters the most. All of the strands are very straight and clean, which of course isn't realistic, so once the whole head is covered, I separate the individual strands and break them up into smaller strands that break up the main flow. This, in combination with making the strand tips uneven, create a way more natural look. This whole process took around 6 hours. So if you ever see a character of mine that has sculpted hair, it's probably because I didn't want to spend a crazy amount of time just on the hair. The deadline is approaching fast and there are a few things left to do. I had a few rock models that I've used for the environment. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. To create her makeup, I combine multiple materials for the different layers. One for the white foundation, the eyeshadow, eyeliner, and lipstick. And to control each of them separately, I use a black and white image texture that controls the mix of the basic skin texture and the different layers. She's looking beautiful, so now let's beautify the outfit as well. With the materials, I can now add super fine details like the individual threads of the fabric, which adds a whole nother level of realism and awesomeness to everything. League of Legends likes to add this super fine and subtle detail into their surfaces, which makes them look way more natural, which is what I was trying to emulate in my materials as well. The floral pattern in this black fabric, these metallic lines in the white top, or these wavy smoke patterns in the gold elements turn these boring plain surfaces into these super intricate surfaces that look amazing in the final shots.